Hi, everyone. This is Jessica Moore. I'm the Customer and Partner Success Manager at Inflectra, and we're here today with Adam Sandman, who is the Director of Technology at Inflectra, and Jim Ball, who is one of our great customers at the Cincinnati Insurance Company. And we are going to talk to him today a little bit about their architecture. Jim, could you tell us a little bit about how you got to using SpiraPlan?
Sure, Jessica. So back in 2016, we had a directive to go away from what was then what we were looking to do was reduce our costs. And as anyone who has used the support maintenance fees were fairly high, and they got higher each year. So I was given the mission of going out and trying to find a testing tool. This was supposed to be for the testing group, where we could transfer our tests over from track our defects. Pretty much, I was looking for a testing tool to replace.
And Jim, how did you end up sort of finding that experience of the migration and the when you moved from to what was then SpiraTest? How did that work for your organization?
It was good. One of the things that gave us an opportunity to do was really start from scratch. One of the in my former life here at Cincinnati Insurance, I was the auditor, and we had so many test cases, so much garbage inside of our databases. I mean, those things are humongous, and this gave us an opportunity to look at what we were doing, looking at our workflows, and in a lot of cases, starting from scratch to redevelop our legacy apps with kind of a new beginning, really, to get them started.
Right. Was there any organizational change, from the end users who were used to a certain tool, and how did you overcome that?
That is, to be honest, we're still overcoming that. It's funny that you discover over time that generally speaking, users like to be told what to do. They don't want to figure out what to do. And that is and continues to be a real challenge. So when I approached this, when we started out with this tool, I had a very, what I call here a hippie attitude, where I was like, everyone, you should set up your project how it makes sense to you. Whereas in the past, and when I was the auditor, it was, you do this, this comes after this, and it was very strict, and our workflow was locked, and only my team could adjust any workflow, and we had to have long conversations about it. Whereas with SpiraTest, I just threw the workflow at them and said, hey man, you guys figure out how you want to do this. and quite frankly, a lot of the folks weren't real comfortable making those decisions. So that was part of the journey. Was the my direct manager Jeff Rook and I have been really in the weeds on this for the last 3 years. And over time, we're developing more and more guardrails for folks to kind of keep them in their lane. The ones who are running more agile projects and really want to get done what they need to get done, they can do it using Spira. The bigger legacy projects, we're really having to set up a lot of guardrails around folks and just keep them in their lane regarding regarding how to get through the testing cycle and how to report things back and all of that goodness.
Cool.
Could you tell us a little bit about the environment in which SpiraTest and now SpiraPlan are being used?
Sure, and just before we get there, and I appreciate that question, let me talk about, so what we did was, initially speaking, we engaged Adam from the sales perspective, and we got our trial version of SpiraTest. We started looking at it. We'd ask questions. One of the amazing things I found about Inflectra was, literally minutes, hours. You can count. If something took 2 hours for somebody to get back to me, that was a long time. And coming from the world where the outsourced support was always, tenuous at best, and you had to do multiple days, weeks, years to get something solved. That was one of the biggest things as an administrator, was for the folks at Inflectra to get back to us really quick. So along the way, we started with our Spira test. We get our questions, so that that really raised up Spira or Inflectra on our list, just because of the personalized service and the quick response on things. So then we ended up initially purchasing, so Spira test. Then we found out about tasks. Adam introduced us to the task piece, which was in SpiraTeam. Mm-hmm. And at that point, we were like, yeah, we want that too. So our initial purchase was a SpiraTeam for 20 users. We thought that would get us into a project or two, and we'd be able to get a good feel of what was going on. And then, the more we worked with it, the more we worked with the folks at Inflectra, pretty much. And Adam, you can help me out with this. Was it like, maybe 5 or 6 months later, we were buying Enterprise.
Yeah, it was quick, relatively soon afterwards, and we're like, oh wow, this is quick, but this is great. And it was great to work with Jim, because he had lots of good feedback, and I think we were I think Jim was a little surprised some of the features that were in the team product that I think he didn't realize were there, and that other groups were looking for. And so very quickly, the conversation started getting a lot more serious and intense about how it could be used to do other things at Cincinnati Insurance, which we were excited about. And then the feedback and the ideas started coming.
Right. So then we went Enterprise. So we, one of the beautiful things about Enterprise, at least in its current state and the state in when we bought it, was you can have as many servers as you want. You can have as many users as you want. You can divide it amongst your organization, or you can have it all centralized. And that gave us great flexibility, at least for testing and training people up. Is, I didn't have to worry. I can install Spira on something, get a database up and running, and it's good to go. So that was a huge relief, and a big differentiator between and Spira, is that once I got my enterprise license, I just went. Whereas with every time you change an IP address on something, you had to get a new license and had to deprecate the old license, and there was just so much additional maintenance involved, and that can lead me down a whole nother path that maybe you guys should guide me back to, is the administration of this compared to a system like. But I'm going to stay on my journey for the moment, and then we can swing back if you guys remind me. So the next Spira plan, and some of the plans for Spira plan came out. We met with Adam at Star East in Florida, and we were talking about it. And so we put in our budget to go ahead and go with, because of the portfolio features that were coming up, and the program features that are in the system now, and they're growing. Our PMO said, hey, we're looking for a tool to do this. We're making an agile transformation now. So do we have anything in-house? And Jeff and I are like, well, this will do it. We can do waterfall or agile, or anything in between. So we went ahead and put in our budget for Spira plan, and now I think we're maxed out, aren't we? We're full Spira plan users with enterprise licensing. So right. I don't think there's anything left, right?
Not on the Spira side, no. There's automation and other stuff, but yeah, you and also not only have you, in terms of maxing out what the products, but also in terms of the features. I think you've used almost every feature. Maybe the risk management, I'm not sure about, but everything other than that, maybe even that too, you've used.
That is correct. So it's depending on the project, we're such a large organization that we have so many different projects that are doing different things. So we got some agile, some classic waterfall. Probably a lot of the financial technology companies that are involved with InflectraCon would know that all the regulatory stuff. So we have systems that are on AIX. We have DOS looking systems. We have so many different kind of systems that we're trying to balance. And one of the selling points to me was that you could pretty much do whatever you wanted in the Spira environment. The challenge with that, though, is, and Adam and Simon and I have joked or laughed about the things that people have started using SpiraTeam for that we didn't intend for it. I'm pretty sure they didn't intend for it. I know that personally, my team uses it as a knowledge base to support our user group. I'm pretty sure that it wasn't meant to be a wiki, but we turned it in, created the workflow that we wanted, and we actually demonstrated it to the Inflectra folks when we were at Star East. So they got a little look at what the future might be for them as well. But our projects have every different. If there's a way to use this, we're figuring out a way to use it.
Mm-hmm. And I think also you've also hooked up to other systems as well, like some of the source code management tools for Microsoft platforms, non-Microsoft. The range of technologies I remember being quite large as well that you're using it for. Is that true?
Yeah. We pretty much have a at least in the recent past, it was half Java, half .NET, but we're integrating some different technology in there now. From an external perspective. And it's funny, my manager and I met about this today, that we're looking to integrate more of like the Jenkins build pieces of it. But currently we have integrated Azure DevOps, the development that my team personally does. We have Azure DevOps hooked up to the DevOps server where we are pushing information back and forth. We comment from Azure into Spira, so we know what's in each build. So the Azure DevOps piece we're using, one of our larger projects, our commercial lines division. They all use the Spira Explorer, Visual Studio Explorer, where they can see their tasks and their incidents that are assigned to them from within the interface of Visual Studio itself, without actually having to go to Spira. Those are the two big integrations that I can think of.
Right. That makes sense.
You guys are super users.
Yeah, well, Simon would say the same thing, because we make his life a little bit hectic, I think, sometimes. Oh, and Excel. The Excel import piece is really big to us. Data manipulation outside in the Excel piece. We've worked with the Inflectra folks on some challenges we've had with that, and they've come through with making some changes in a new version of the Excel import tool.
Cool.
Well, I think our conversations have driven us, or helped guide us, I should say, in improving the tool for large users such as yourself, and looking down the road at how we can be more accommodating or make enhancements that really help an enterprise company or enterprise users in a big company.
You guys have been great about that. Of course, we always wanted yesterday, but you guys have been great about continuing to produce things on a regular basis.
I think as a customer of ours, we've always appreciated the fact that you're willing to understand that we have to balance doing something for the testing teams versus the development teams versus the managers. And one of the things we try and do is, balance out the functionality we're giving so that each part of the tool is balanced, so that the functionality in each area is developed accordingly. And so sometimes we might do management stuff in a release or development stuff. And you've always been very good at being able to appreciate, some of the ways we prioritize, and we appreciate, and also that we appreciate when you give us feedback. You give us the business context as to why we need this feature. That really helps us understand why something is needed, not just what something is. And that helps. That makes the feedback more valuable, more actionable for us, I think.
And it is funny. So you give the testers a piece so they can do exploratory testing for a few months, and then we'll do a little work on the portfolio, and then a little bit of work on the requirements piece. So yeah, I agree.
So can you tell us a little bit about how you went from 20 users to an enterprise license, and what you had to do to scale that?
Sure. And we have had contact with some of Inflectra's partners as far as just talking to them a little bit about how we have things set up. So I set this up earlier this year, and just to kind of give a demo of how we have things set up. Now, obviously, there's a million ways to approach any architecture at any time. The way we decided to handle it, and I have a couple pictures to show it, but this is how we, at least for the first, maybe the first 2 years, this is the basic architecture. Are you seeing it on the screen, or am I not sure?
Yeah, that was good.
Oh, okay, there we go. Came in. So the way we approached it is we have a load balancer in front. So no matter what we do behind that load balancer, we can find the apps that we need. And when I show you one of the later slides, you'll see that there is many servers or more servers being addressed. And in order to give redundancy, we had two servers. So both of those, the two servers you see on the screen, App Server 1 and App Server 2, were running, had Spira installed on them, and they pretty much split the traffic based on which had CPU available. So the load balancer itself was saying, hey, which guy has the CPU available, and it would guide people in that direction. And then we had a isolated SQL server. You see down on the left, that is a SQL Server cluster. We started with 2012. We've done an upgrade since. Side note, the fact that that Inflectra goes straight up Microsoft without any kind of special needs on the SQL Server realm. I mean, you can run this on SQL Server Personal Edition, which we kind of do when we're spinning up dev versions. But that has been unbelievably helpful to us and a huge differentiator between and this. Would only certify like 10, 12-year-old versions of SQL Server. So as our company, wanted to go to SQL Server 2012, we couldn't go past 2008 R2, and we're talking 2016.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. So it was always a pain in the rear to kind of balance that, because you got the company architecture coming in and saying, look, we can't use 2008 R2 anymore. It's not safe for 2005. We need to move on. And we're like, well, we got this legacy system that we're paying a ton of money for maintenance each year on. And, so this was another benefit. And we've gone from 2012 to 2016 to 2019, the latest one, or 2017, I know we've run it on. So the fact that, we can do that without we have had no problem with that is huge from my administrative and architectural side. So another side note that's really important is the Microsoft SQL Server being very flexible. The other piece to this is I didn't really know about this technology until we started using it internally for file shares. We use something called an Isilon EMC file server. I think Dell makes those. Anyway, it simulates a mounting point for any kind of file system that's needed. So that's where our file repository is there. So what happens is the app servers are pointed at that Isilon file server, so that if Adam's on App Server 1 looking at an attachment, and Jessica's on App Server 2, and they need to get to the same attachment, we're getting it back. We're pointing to the same place, so they're working with the same data. Mm-hmm. So this is what our architecture looked like for quite some time. Internally, we use a tool called Dynatrace to do monitoring, and as a production system, Spira is one of the systems that we monitor, because we have enough users that we want to make sure that we're aware of anything going haywire, or if what I use it mainly for is for scalability. I need to make sure that I'm providing, that things aren't maxed out all the time. So what you see on your screen here is just a snippet in time, and I really just took this for the presentation back in January. This was back when we were running the architecture that you're seeing. So if you look here, the 001 is that's one of the servers. 003 is another server. Don't ask about 002. We had other issues with that, not related to this. So this is our server 1, App Server 1. This is our App Server 2. Mm-hmm. And if you look, over time, we would have these machines would max out. And I got to tell you that while they were maxing out, folks would notice differences in in the way things were running. So a situation that would max things out, for example, is, I have 500 test cases in a test set. Mm-hmm. I'm copying and pasting that. Well, what happens is anybody who happens to be on this first server, when it's at 99%, they feel a little bit of that sluggishness, getting from artifact to artifact. They see it, and again, they experience it. So one of the things that Dynatrace told us was we were watching the calls, and we watched the things that were causing the longest delay. And what we saw was everything that happened inside of the that would happen after the web page would come up was a REST call. It would be a REST service that would spin up the message service. It would be a REST service that would call up the requirement service. It would be a REST service that calls up the incident service, right? Mm-hmm. So we noticed that, and what we decided we would do, and this was a very interesting experiment for us, is we put a third server online. What we did, though, is for the load balancer, we took the so HTTP calls, just basically website service, would be handled by these guys. So it would divide up the work, and then any of the heavy lifting, like a copying, pasting, or really anything that's beyond just browsing through the system, would get shifted to this app server 3. All REST calls were being guided here. And these aren't the greatest examples, but what would happen is, so nobody was actually going to this 004 web server, but it was getting a lot of action because we were diverting the traffic from the web servers to this, to do a lot of the heavy lifting over here on this, I guess it's cream-colored server. But with this architecture, we did not want to have a single point of failure. So because we were having this third server handle all the REST stuff, we're like, hey, why don't we put up another one? And what we ended up doing was we ended up defining it was double load balancing. So what happens is a request comes into the load balancer, and it says, okay, which one of these web servers is least busy? So it will send you to the least busy web server. And then you said, okay, I want to import some requirements, 100 requirements is my project. So what happens is, even though you're doing your work on the app server here, when it needs to do the import, it will go here and say, okay, well, this is a REST call, so which one of these guys is available? So you're dividing your traffic on the front end for your display, and then any work that needs to be done on the back end is being divided between servers that are doing the REST calls. Mm-hmm. So what we noticed is that we could really calm. So here's our web server. This is the average CPU usage on our web server. Look how calm that is compared to the things that are happening on the REST server. So basically, we created a middleware layer here where any REST stuff happens with what are 004 and 005, which are the third and fourth servers in this mix. Mm-hmm. So the web servers never saw the match. You saw back in this guy. Oopsie. You saw back in this guy that they would peak. They would peak frequently, as you could see the bumps here. And with these guys, with this double load balance that we set up, you could see they never really had to stress, and people could enjoy much better performance. So I will take a breath and see if there's any questions there, and then I will add one more piece to this, and we can move on from there.
Well, it's interesting. One of the things that we've observed with users is that performance is not necessarily an absolute thing. It's a user experience metric. So what happens is the way Spira is organized is that you load the page frame up. That's what users see. Meanwhile, parts of the page may be loading and things may be happening, but the user can still interact with it, and the user feels the responsiveness because they can start to work. They're not waiting for all those REST calls to finish. So it's interesting. What you've done effectively is to maximize the user experience, so that way a user doesn't necessarily have to wait for certain things to happen. I guess one thing that makes me think of as an engineering design for REST could be segregating out even the REST services between REST services that give you immediate action to do something like load an incident page or save a data element versus a long-running copy a bunch of stuff, which may be segregating even the REST calls into high and low priority ones that would actually give you the ability to know anything at this URL is a high priority one. So have more intelligence around the load balancing.
Yep, no, that would be an excellent addition to the group. So the last thing that I wanted to touch on with this is, so we got note, and again, I'm using this for scalability to make sure that I'm planning. So we got a note that one of our personal lines team was coming over, and we anticipated in between 100 or 200 additional users. So in order to get ahead of the curve, we went ahead and stood up another server. We threw it in as a REST layer server as well. And as these folks are coming on, these services are really calm. You'll notice we changed our reporting over the course of this year, but you see that everything is just really calm and a common, during the day. And this is one of the REST servers. This is one of the REST servers. This is one of the REST servers. One of the web servers has popped up here, but really we're offloading so much of that work onto these what we're calling middleware boxes that the user experience, even as we add more users. So we have up to 1,350 or so users in the system. They're not all in at the same time. That's what we have available right now as far as users entered into the system. But as we bring groups over, especially the larger groups, we're keeping an eye on our capacity. We're keeping our capacity planning ahead of the curve. Just as we know people are coming on, we want to make sure that our users are having the best experience possible.
What do you do on the database side? Because obviously one of the things that as listening to this is like as you horizontally scale out the middleware for the REST calls and the web servers and the app servers, what about the database layer? How have you scaled that up in concert?
So that's a good question. We have a separate group that handles the databases. We have an entire DBA group. This is a SQL cluster, so it gets whatever power it needs as it goes. This is a production one, so those guys are the ones that keep track of that. Now we will see, this guy right here, the purple one is the SQL server. We will see, peaks, and it'll hang at 100% for a while. We'll call them and say, hey, something's going haywire with the SQL server. There's a call that's bad, or a bad cache path, or just something like that happens. Plus, we share this prod server with other. What we still have left of on that one. There's plenty of apps that are using that. So we have a clustered SQL database team that's running this whole thing.
Okay. I was wondering if there was any advice for people watching this video, any advice you would have about the things they had done. But I guess if it's another group, I know that we recommend for customers nowadays using things like flash memory. I mean, the faster the hardware for the drives and also memory, because SQL Server can load more of the database into RAM. We found those to be two good, just general recommendations. But I was wondering if you had anything else that you found or that team has told you is a good practice.
No, I mean, we have enough. We have enough going on those. We have enough servers covering this that we're just throwing hardware at it. So whatever optimization that they use, generally speaking, from their standards is what we're using, and I'm not aware of that.
Nothing special. Okay. One thing you touched on earlier on in the conversation was the ease of administration, and we said we would get back to that. So in keeping with that, what did you find the administration level of Spira test team and plan compared to and other tools you've used in the past?
That's a great question. It's so, it's funny that I've gotten so used to this now, and I have not upgraded our legacy in years. And the ease of installation, when you literally can have a version of SpiraTeam up in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I mean, really, on your laptop, you get SQL Personal, you get this, and you install it. You can have it up and running, that quickly. So one of the biggest benefits that our administration team feels is the ease of upgrade. It used to be, we used to have to plan for 6 to 8 months to upgrade all the organization we have to do, all the customized scripting and all of that stuff. Whereas now me and my co-administrator on this, we get on Friday at 10 o'clock, and oftentimes 10:30, 11 o'clock, we're totally done and the system's totally tested in production. So from an administrative perspective, it's a lot less overhead on our part. The ease of use is one thing. One of the things we've adjusted to and we appreciate this, is the agile approach that Inflectra has taken, is that we expect a build pretty much every month to 6 weeks. So I have a standing change request with the change request group, saying that basically every 2 weeks, I'll probably have some sort of build or upgrade so I can keep bleeding edge. That's one of the things that we could never do with, we could never be bleeding edge because of the things like, you know, the SQL server or all of the custom work we had to do to undo the things that we had put in over time, all of the customizations, you know, all of the workflows and business logics and our utilities that we wrote against it. Whereas here we have an expectation that we pretty much can upgrade every month with very little impact to our day to day. So administration, way different, way better. And, you know, the fact that we're going with Microsoft technology versus the Tomcat and, you know, Oracle or Microsoft, and, you know, it's all the other complications with just as a comparison. So it's very nice for us to be able to upgrade quickly. The installs are, you know, generally super quick. As you can see from, you know, the architecture on the screen, or the screen share that I have here, is that at this point we have 4 servers, but we're up to 6 servers that we have to install on every time. And it's just, it's super quick. It's very easy. It's very consistent.
Mm-hmm. And also the desktop side of things, I completely forgot about that. But I mean, having looked at recently for some other customers that are migrating, I've forgotten that it's a whole desktop client app you have to install and manage for your end users, whereas Spira is cross browser. So was that a big change for your desktop admin team to sort of get used to that in a good way?
Oh, yeah, that is a great question, because the lockdown on our machines for, you had to install the ActiveX controls. I don't know what they're doing now because, you know, I'm a few versions behind. But if somebody new comes into the company, somebody from desktop management has to explicitly get on their machine and give them permission to download and install the ActiveX components of. Whereas this, you fire up any browser and you're on your way. Another thing that this locks us down to, at least internally, is IE is the only browser that you could use for. Whereas I personally use Firefox, my boss personally uses Chrome. So, you know, the fact that we can bounce around, we test it on Edge now, so it seems all good. So that is a difference as well for the desktop people.
Right. And also for the Apple users that we know, we've quite a few customers using Apple products, and they can use Safari or Chrome, not have to worry about any kind of compatibility issues.
Sure.
That's cool.
Can you think of any other unanticipated benefits that you found?
Things that you weren't expecting, I think, is the idea.
From the program's perspective or from the administrative perspective?
Program, either, whichever you feel comfortable talking about.
All right. From the program perspective, you know, I touched on it earlier in our conversation, is the fact that, you know, we just wanted a testing tool, and then we wanted a testing tool that could do tasks, and then we wanted a testing tool that could do tasks, could do requirements, that could do reporting, that could do, you know, so just the layering on top of all the things that we've taken benefit, plus the fact that it can do any kind of project, and some things, like I said earlier, wasn't intended to do, has been a huge benefit. Anything we need to do, we'll just say, yeah, we'll set it up in Spira. We'll set up a project in Spira, see if we can figure something out. So flexibility is awesome. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
And you did touch on it before. The risk management is something I would love to see us get more into.
Well, I think from a change management standpoint, we've always advised clients, don't try and use every feature. Even if you need that feature, don't necessarily do it the first or second or third year, because you want to make sure that your users don't get overwhelmed by the function, by any tool. So I think, yeah, even though that functionality might be useful, it makes complete sense that it's not the burning need that you had. So laying it into a subsequent, 2021 makes a lot of sense too.
Sure. You're right. And this is actually a side note on this, is that I believe, and I really should have checked before this, but I think we're approaching over 200 products. So the fact that, any individual product could have a risk need and it wouldn't affect the rest of the users. So that's one of the benefits is in order to get into, for example, there was a big hullabaloo that we had to line you up and do this and do that. And then, like I said earlier, that the approach we're taking with this is we just set people up. Here's some basic documentation. This is how you be a product admin, and your workflow can work however you want it to be. You can take this part out if you want. You can keep it in, but we don't push a lot of things on them. So the fact that like the risk module, for example, we wouldn't have to affect a lot of people unless those people needed to be affected. Mm-hmm. So you can influence a small group at a time and test out things, and we've really done that with different products.
Cool. Excellent.
Adam, was there anything else you wanted to add or ask?
I'm trying to think. No, I think we've covered a lot of the different aspects. I guess the one question would be, if you were to look back, go back to the 3-year-old version of yourself when you first picked up the tool. Are there any missteps? And I don't mean decisions that were wrong, but decisions that you might have done differently with more information. So someone watching this video might say, "I'm about to go and deploy SpiraTeam." Are there any tips and tricks you would think now, knowing the system better than you probably did 3 years ago, that you would advise yourself or a new person doing the same journey that they should do differently?
Sure. The first one that comes to mind is because we have a load balanced system, me and the other administrator were not aware of utilizing machine keys. So we caused ourselves and our users a lot of frustration by, as they were being load balanced, if they hadn't been on that server before, they had to log in again.
Oh,
and so that is something that is a huge gotcha that I just didn't realize. Is the machine codes in IIS have to be identical to code and decode, as far as both of them. They have to line up so that you can go from server to server without having to relog in. Mm-hmm. That's big. I probably would have bought Tesla then. That would have been a regret. Let's see. Other big, it's funny that with everything that we're all going through this year, the before time seems so long ago that besides the machine key and maybe doing this dividing the work out for the rest, there's not a lot of things that I don't like about this compared to my life before it.
Right, or templating, things like we're giving the user the infinite flexibility. Is that something you've kept doing, the hippie groovy approach, or have you had to have a bit more processing guardrails as you let people on? Have you been able to keep that ethos, I guess, or is it a bit more constrained than it was when you first started using the tool?
It really depends on the folks that we're bringing on board. If it's a big glacier-sized project, then you have to have the guardrails. You really do have to get a process in place, and you have to figure out things like what is the reporting mechanism. Exactly how are you going to use the individual pieces. The smaller one-off products that I think those benefit the most from Spira is that hey, we just need to get this feature or upgrade this system. For example, I would use this in my past life to manage my upgrade project, because then I could, dump it at the end, but keep all the tasks in place and all the development work we had to do and upgrades and things like that. So I think the hippie approach is great for the smaller one-off projects, and I think you really do have to think about it ahead of time, get some reporting mechanisms in place ahead of time, just so you can satisfy the folks higher up, give them what they need. This tool does a great job of giving the people in the field what they need, the people in the trenches. But having the folks above you decide what they need and then setting up your products accordingly is a big challenge that I would recommend that folks get worked out before you delve into it. That would be a big one. Is what is it that you need to see so that I can organize the product and the workflow to get to that end.
Right, rather than retrofitting it afterwards when users are already live in the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
that
a great
recommendation.
Adam, did you have anything else you want to ask?
No, I think that's it. That's great.
All
Jim,
right.
so much for being with us today. This was incredibly informative, and we appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jim.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I hope next year we get to see each other and we get to do something exciting like this, but in person.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.